They laughed together when the world wasn't watching. They comforted each other when life became unbearable. But behind every smile was a silence, a quiet space filled with heartbreak, pride, and regret. For years, Elton John kept the truth to himself about the bond he shared with Princess Diana and the pain that almost tore them apart. Now, he was finally ready to tell the story that changed both of their lives forever. It began on a summer night in 1981, a year that would reshape British history. Prince Charles was preparing to marry a young nursery school assistant named Diana Spencer, and the entire nation was swept up in the fantasy of a royal fairy tale. But for Elton John, already one of the most famous musicians in the world, that year marked something far more personal, the beginning of a friendship that would define his life in ways he never expected. By then, Elton was no stranger to royal circles. The Queen Mother adored his music, Princess Margaret often invited him to intimate palace gatherings, and he had dined with dukes, earls, and princes alike. He had even shared jokes with Prince Philip, who once teased him about driving a bright yellow Aston Martin around Windsor. Yet despite all the glamour, Elton had never truly felt at home in those elite spaces. That changed one unforgettable night at Prince Andrew's 21st birthday party inside Windsor Castle. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, jewels, and royal formality. Elton sat at the piano, playing softly as guests mingled. He later admitted he felt nervous and out of place among so many titled figures. Then he looked across the room and saw her, Diana Spencer, young, radiant, and not yet a princess. The air seemed to shift. She had an effortless social ease, a warmth that filled the room. When their eyes met, Elton smiled politely. She returned it with a sincerity that felt instantly familiar. Within minutes, they were talking like old friends. They joked about the awkward music and, in a moment of spontaneous mischief, ended up miming the Charleston together in the middle of the ballroom. Even the Queen noticed and smiled. Elton would later say that night felt as though he had known her forever. For Diana, that humor was a lifeline. She was weeks away from marrying into an institution built on duty, silence, and emotional restraint. Every move she made would soon be dissected by the press. For Elton, she was refreshingly real, unpretentious, quick-witted, and deeply empathetic. She was, as he once said, fabulous company, the best dinner guest, wonderfully indiscreet, a real gossip, but also someone who genuinely cared about people. From that night forward, their bond deepened. They were both outsiders in their own worlds. Elton, the flamboyant rock star constantly judged for his sexuality. Diana, the young woman about to lose her freedom to royal protocol. They saw each other's pain without judgment, and that shared understanding turned laughter into trust. What began on a dance floor would grow into one of the most unusual and enduring friendships of the 20th century. Neither of them knew it would one day end in tragedy, or that Elton's voice would be the one to say goodbye. Through the 1980s and early 1990s, they became inseparable in a way few people truly understood. Their lives were lived under relentless flashbulbs, but behind the headlines was a friendship built on honesty and vulnerability. In public they smiled at galas, premieres, and charity events, but in private they listened to each other's fears. Diana had a gift for making powerful people feel at ease, yet she herself rarely felt at peace. Trapped between expectation and emotion, royalty and humanity, she suffocated behind palace walls. As her marriage to Prince Charles grew colder, newspapers filled with rumors of distance and despair. Inside Kensington Palace, Diana felt alone. Elton understood that loneliness all too well. Behind his extravagant costumes and fame, he was fighting addiction, insecurity, and the pressure of constant scrutiny. They recognized that pain in each other. Their friendship grew stronger through shared causes. Diana supported Elton's AIDS charity work at a time when stigma was everywhere. She shocked the world by visiting patients and holding their hands without gloves, changing public perception with a single act of compassion. Elton later said that was the moment he realized how fearless she truly was. She didn't care about appearances. She cared about people. They also shared laughter. Diana teased Elton about his wardrobe. He admired her ability to turn royal stiffness into warmth. At one dinner party, Hollywood stars nearly came to blows over her attention, and Elton joked that she could drive grown men mad without even trying. Yet behind the charm, Diana struggled with bulimia, sleepless nights, and the feeling of being unloved. Elton would sometimes visit her just to listen, no cameras, no audience, just two friends escaping the noise. By the early 1990s, they were like siblings, relying on each other emotionally. But fame, exhaustion, and pressure began to strain even their strongest bond. And soon, a misunderstanding would push them apart in a way either expected. By the mid-1990s, the friendship between Elton John and Princess Diana was one of the most talked about relationships between a celebrity and a royal. They had weathered scandals, supported each other through heartbreak, and trusted one another with secrets that never reached the press. But in 1996, something unexpected happened, something that would fracture their bond and leave both of them wounded and silent. It began with a charity project that meant the world to Elton. He was working on a glamorous coffee table book of rock photography, with all proceeds going to AIDS foundations. Diana had agreed to write the foreword. It wasn't just a favor, it was a statement. She had long been an advocate for AIDS awareness, breaking taboos and humanizing a disease many still feared. Her name on the project symbolized courage and compassion. Then, without warning, she withdrew. A letter arrived from her office, polite but distant, explaining she could no longer participate. The real reason, as Elton later learned, was royal disapproval. Palace advisors objected to her association with a book that included artistic but semi-nude imagery of male models. To them, it wasn't appropriate for a member of the royal family. To Elton, it felt like a betrayal, not from a princess, but from a friend he thought would stand with him no matter what. He was hurt, and he let her know. He sent her a message expressing his disappointment. Diana, feeling cornered and pressured, responded with what Elton later called a terrible letter, sharp, defensive, and final. After that, there was silence. For months they didn't speak. Elton felt wounded, not only by her decision, but by the emotional distance that followed. Diana, meanwhile, was under enormous strain. Her divorce from Prince Charles had just been finalized. She had lost her royal title and, with it, a part of her identity. The press followed her every move. Surrounded by advisors with conflicting agendas, she began to question who she could truly trust. Elton later admitted that pride kept him from reaching out. "I could have called her," he said, "but I didn't. We were both too proud." And before either of them could fix it, time slipped away. For almost a year, the silence between them grew heavier. Elton continued his charity work, and Diana tried to rebuild her life as an independent humanitarian. Yet both carried the quiet ache of a friendship left unresolved. Then fate intervened in the most tragic way. On July 15, 1997, fashion designer Gianni Versace, one of their closest mutual friends, was shot and killed outside his Miami Beach mansion. The news stunned the world. Both Elton and Diana were devastated. Diana had adored Versace, not just as a designer, but as a confidant. After hearing of his murder, she reportedly asked her bodyguard, "Do you think they'll do that to me?" It was a chilling foreshadowing. At Versace's funeral in Milan, Diana saw Elton sitting in grief. They hadn't spoken in months, but she walked over and took his hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It was silly, our falling out. Let's be friends again." Elton later said that in that moment, everything melted away. In true Diana fashion, she broke the tension with humor, making him laugh through tears. Their friendship was reborn right there in a cathedral filled with mourning. They made plans to see each other again soon. But 6 weeks later, that reunion would never happen. In the early hours of August 31, 1997, Elton John was woken by the sound of his fax machine. A message came through offering condolences. Confused, he turned on the television, and the world fell silent. Princess Diana had been killed in a car crash in Paris, chased by paparazzi through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. She was just 36 years old. Elton was shattered. It felt unreal. Weeks earlier they had laughed together at Versace's funeral, and now she was gone. The Spencer family asked Elton to perform at her funeral. Along with his longtime collaborator Bernie Taupin, he rewrote the lyrics to his 1973 song, Candle in the Wind, originally about Marilyn Monroe. The new version began, Goodbye England's Rose. On September 6, 1997, Elton stood in Westminster Abbey before millions watching around the world. His hands trembled as he began to sing. It wasn't a performance. It was a farewell. For 4 minutes, the world wasn't watching a superstar, it was watching a friend say goodbye. The single became the best-selling record in history, with over 33 million copies sold. Yet Elton never felt proud of it. He said it wasn't something he could celebrate. To him, it wasn't a hit. It was a wound. Years passed, but Elton never forgot his promise to protect Diana's sons. When Prince Harry later faced intense media harassment, Elton spoke out, saying he felt a deep duty to protect him from the same press intrusion that led to his mother's death. He remained close to both princes, often hosting them privately. Elton later admitted that their brief estrangement haunted him. If I could go back, he said, I would pick up the phone. I would say sorry. Life's too short for pride. He believed Diana's withdrawal from his charity project had been influenced by palace pressure, a reminder of the invisible forces that shaped her life. Their friendship was unlike any other, a royal and a rock star, bound by loneliness and laughter. Through Elton, the world saw a version of Diana that wasn't polished or rehearsed, a woman who joked, cried, and swore like anyone else. Through Diana, Elton rediscovered compassion and purpose. Even now, when he sits at the piano and the room falls silent, there is a pause where her memory lives on. Even now, when Elton John sits at a piano and the room grows quiet, there is a moment before the first note where memory fills the silence. In that pause, he still hears Diana's laughter, the kind that once cut through royal stiffness and media pressure like sunlight through clouds. He often said she proved that kindness and honesty could survive in a world built on image. That was what made her unforgettable. Their friendship was never about fame. It was about two people who felt trapped by the roles they were expected to play. A rock star hiding behind costumes and bravado. A princess hiding behind protocol and duty. Together, they dropped their masks. In each other's company, they were just Elton and Diana, two flawed, funny, wounded souls trying to survive in public lives that never allowed privacy. After her death, Elton's life changed forever. The grief reshaped him. He poured his pain into purpose, becoming one of the most powerful voices in AIDS activism and humanitarian work. He believed Diana had shown him what courage really looked like, not loud or dramatic, but quiet, compassionate, and fearless in the face of judgment. In the years that followed, Elton rarely spoke publicly about their falling out. But when he did, his message was always the same: pride destroys time. He admitted that if he had one regret, it was not picking up the phone when it mattered most. We were both stubborn, he said. And the price of that stubbornness was a goodbye I never got to say. Their story became more than just a tale of celebrity and royalty. It became a lesson about friendship under pressure, about how misunderstanding can separate even the closest hearts, and about how fragile life really is. Elton kept his promise to Diana's memory. He stayed close to William and Harry, offering guidance and protection whenever he could. He spoke out when the press crossed lines. He stood beside them in moments of loss and growth. In them, he saw pieces of Diana, the same warmth, the same sensitivity, the same quiet strength. Today, decades later, the world still mourns her. And Elton still carries her memory like a candle that never goes out. Not as a public symbol, but as a private friend who once danced with him in a castle ballroom when no one was watching. Their bond was built on truth, broken by pride, and immortalized by a song. And in that song, in that silence before the piano begins, she still lives. Not as a princess. Not as an icon. But as the woman who once made a rock star feel less alone in the chaos of fame. And that is the story Elton John kept in his heart for years, until now. If this story moved you, Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next Untold story. We dive deep into the lives behind the fame, the friendships, the heartbreaks, and the moments the cameras never show. Drop a comment below and tell us what part of Elton and Diana's story touched you the most. Your voice matters here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.